Hey guys, today I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to algebra. Before we start, please make sure that you have your table of contents titled Introduction to Algebra and the top of your page titled Introduction to Algebra. Remember, you can pause this video at any time if you need to. So I'm going to talk about some key terms so that you're familiar with them. So when we talk about equations, you'll understand what we're talking about. First of all, we have algebraic expression. That's an expression, which is a fancy word for math problem, that may contain numbers, variables, and or symbols. Remember, we used the variable x in our last unit. Remember, the variable is our unknown. We don't know what the variable is. So let's talk about parts of an expression. You have your coefficient, variable, and then down here we have constant. The first one I want to talk to you guys about is actually what a variable is. We've already talked about this a little bit, so you should be somewhat familiar, but a variable is a symbol or letter that represents one or more numbers unknown. For example, we used A or X. In our expression here, 5p plus 4, our variable is p. You can use any letter you choose for your variables. However, we highly recommend that you do not use O because O could be misunderstood for 0. So in 5p plus 4, the variable is letter P. A coefficient is a number that contains a variable. So what we mean by this is just basically a number that's next to a variable. Snug as a bug in the rug, they're just so close to each other. So my coefficient is 5. Now it sounds like a scary word, but it's really not. It's just a fancy name for a number that's sitting next to a variable. And last but not least is a constant. A constant is just a number. Fancy word for just a number, but this number is without a variable. It's sitting all alone. So in my 5p plus 4, my constant is 4. There's no letter that is attached to it. Make sure that you have these written down. Pause as needed. Now I want you to go ahead and I want you to try these two problems and see if you can identify the coefficient, the variable or variables, or there could be more than one coefficient, and constant. Just write it next to it. Pause this now and see if you can find what they are. Okay, so now we're back. Let's look at what the coefficient is. The coefficient, we said, is a fancy word for a number that's next to a variable. So hopefully you wrote 5. 5 is the coefficient. The variable in this problem is x. And our constant is 3. Down here, we actually look to see what is our coefficient. And the coefficient here is 2. That's the only number that's attached to a variable. My variables, there's 2 variables. We have the letter Z. I'm going to put it like that. And we have the letter Y. We actually have 2 variables there. And my constant, my number that's all alone, is 3. Hopefully you got those correct. So let's talk about what an equation is, because we're going to start with equations soon. An equation is a math problem, again, like the expression, but this time it uses an equal sign to show that two expressions are equal. So it's a math problem that uses an equal sign to show that two expressions are equal. So what does that mean? have an example here, the difference between an expression and an equation. And again, pause this as needed. So the difference here is the expression. We just said that an expression is a math problem. So here's an example of an expression, 4 plus 8. An equation is 4 plus 8 equals 12, because we said it's a math problem with an equal sign showing that the two sides are equal. Well, 4 plus 8, well, that's 12, so they're equal on both sides. So the only difference between the expression and the equation is the equal sign, showing the expressions are equal. The last term that I want you to be aware of is the term evaluate. Evaluate is just another fancy word that means to solve. You're just going to solve the math problem. I hope this gives you a little bit of introduction to algebra, and we will continue to do more with this.